Home is anywhere where people care about you. Hello, welcome to Season 1, Episode 12 of Adventure Time, Evicted. In this episode, we are introduced to Marceline the Vampire Queen, who comes back from traveling land of Ooh and claims that Jake and Finn's treehouse is her place of residence. Finn and Jake are forced out and have to find a new home. When they establish a new dwelling in a cave, Marceline comes along and says this is also her cave, and Finn and Jake end up fighting her. Marceline thinks the rambunctious duo are fun and pretty hardcore, and thus lets them have their old treehouse back. My thoughts on this episode as a whole? It's okay. It's pretty good. Pretty good. Not great. So, I'm doing a vlog on it partially because I feel obligated, since this is the first time we are introduced to Marceline, the Vampire Queen. And as far as Marceline goes, this episode establishes that she has potential to be a fun character, but it doesn't really explore her beyond any sort of superficial level, and that in general doesn't happen till much later in the series. We get her character traits established, and we get her personality established, but we don't really dive into anything in depth beyond she's a fun-loving gal who likes to screw around and play games and can be a bit douchey. Putting Finn and Jake out in the rain like that, not even letting them stay an extra night, at least until the sun's up? I mean, come on, Marceline. Show some class. Come on. The episode has good humor here and there, but at this point, what episode of Adventure Time doesn't have good humor sewn throughout? I just can't get fully behind this episode. There's odd bits and ends here that kind of don't resonate with me. The fight at the end of the episode, it always felt a bit awkward for me. I'm not sure why, but maybe something about the storyboarding and some of the dialogue being off. It just sort of breaks the good pacing Adventure Time normally has, and it sort of takes me out of the episode. And lines like, "Nobody makes me let go of Jake!" Like, that's not very well written in my opinion. Yeah, Marceline is screwing around and making, stereotypical vampire noises like bleh, 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 but it feels kind of dumb more than anything else. Finn's butt getting slapped is kind of funny, but in general, the kind of action-reaction hits are not quite there, the oomph isn't present, and just the way the shots are framed and the way the animation looks just for that fight, just something not quite right about it. The rest of the episode, it's alright. The montage, the song montage of Let's Find a New Home. Oh my goodness, okay, that montage makes the episode. That by itself there is fantastic. And if that song was taken out of the episode, I think the episode would probably be subpar in my eyes. Just, wow, is that an amazing bit. Marceline's facial expressions in this episode, I think they did a great job for making her kind of verging on gross and vile. She is this attractive, desirable, sexy vampire lady character, so it's nice that still, as a vampire, she does have all these gross forms and kind of hideous facial expressions that are scary. I'm glad they went for that. Traditional vampires are supposed to be quite hideous when they take on their vampire characteristics. Her transformation just flat out being very bat-like, that was a good touch, but just her faces in the window when she's going scaring Finn and Jake, those are done fairly well. I'm glad they went the route they did with her. So, BMO's not a fleshed out character yet in this episode. It stays behind and acts as Marceline's video game console. If this was in any of the later seasons, BMO would completely accompany Finn and Jake in their search for a new home. BMO is an autonomous being, and it was a bit jarring going back and seeing this episode, because I had totally forgotten that in the first season, BMO barely had any lines, and most of them were directly related to Finn and Jake using him as a video game. So, just kind of a little interesting thing I noticed going back, that you could call it kind of an issue with continuity, but I think it's just realizing that they had potential to have a new character here, and they built upon it. I told you, no worms on the bed! Is this foreshadowing to when King Worm traps Finn and Jake in the dreamscape and tries to sap their life energy? I don't know if they had this idea already in mind when they made this episode, but they acted upon it, and it does serve as foreshadowing now, that's for certain. So I thought that was a fun little detail. Just no worms allowed on the bed because they can interfere with your dreams or trap you in your dreams. It's pretty neat. I like it. the landscape of the Land of Boo, it has labels on it. I actually didn't notice this before when I've seen this episode, and I have no idea off the top of my head how many other episodes do this, but regions of the landscape, they have labels, and it's like, why? But okay, sure, why not? Just kind of a fun little detail that I thought I'd mention because it surprised me, because it's there for less than half a second probably. And the infamous Adventure Time snail that appears in every episode, sometimes well hidden and sometimes a bit in the open, but always for a very short duration. This episode, he bugs me so much! The creators must have known, because it's a second of animation, but it loops on itself once, so we see the snail, Finn and Jake walk by him once, and then he's gone, and then he appears at the bottom of the screen and he goes through again, and it's like, why? Why did you animate the snail twice there? You have to have seen that the snail looped, and I don't know why, but it bothers me so much, because I always notice it. If it's a rock or some other miscellaneous item on the floor, who cares? Who cares? But just with a snail waving at you for him to loop twice? Wow! Why Adventure Time? So despite there not being too much to this episode, there's a little bit of character analysis that I think can be done, even though it's at a pretty superficial level. Finn, as we already know, is a very straight-ahead and hard-headed, kind of bashful guy, and when he picks a decision, he tends to stick to it until something changes his mind. And we see this fairly well illustrated in this episode. He calls Marceline wonderful upon hearing about her travels, and then as she tosses him outside into the rain, he says, "I'm gonna kill her." So, yes, Finn sticks to that mentality gun-ho, but he is very willing to change his mind when the situation calls for it, and I think this is overall a pretty good trait. This is a good trait. Now, one of Finn's bad traits is probably that he does not have fear of opponents who are stronger than him. He really wants to fight Marceline and get his treehouse back, even though she is leagues above him when it comes to combat. Jake, on the other hand, Jake is a scaredy cat, and he's probably too much of a scaredy cat who rarely jumps into the situation until Finn is in serious danger. And of course, this happens in this episode, and Finn goes flippin' nuts when he thinks Jake has been zombified. But another one of Jake's traits is that he's a pretty worldly guy. He likes his physical possessions, and I think it's a bit weird because in this episode he abandons the treehouse really easily. I would actually think he'd be a bit more worried about all his stuff. Jake is a go-with-the-flow kind of guy, and he is a very laid-back and lazy person, but he's also very attached to his sandwiches and a lot of other things, as we see in the future. So I found it a little bit out of character for him to just be okay with losing all his possessions, but I guess you could just interpret that as his fear overwhelms his desire for worldly possessions. I don't think I have too much to mention anymore in this section, so let's keep going, I guess, to the montage! Oh, Marceline, why you so mean? Okay, this montage is fantastic. I absolutely adore it. Okay, I'm the type of person who normally really dislikes musical bits in my cartoons. I'm not a fan of that. So, when I say I really love this, it's pretty much the highest praise I can give it. For one, the song is a quirky little tune that's fun to listen to. Two, the events that go along with the song, it can be a bit schlocky to narrate what's happening on screen. Adventure Time gets around that by throwing in lots of fun little details, like when they try to live in a nest, the bird ends up throwing worms at them. And when they try to live in a beehive, the bee barfs honey at them, which, while physiologically is super stupid, it's hilarious, and I loved it. Just, honey barf. But yes, point being, all these fun little details that are presented in the visual sense that aren't in the lyrics, that's how you narrate what's going on screen when it comes to song numbers. It's not fun to just watch people stand around in the same environment singing a song. It's lots of fun for us to see this little montage of events happening, and Adventure Time does this so well. It is so fun to watch Finn and Jake travel across the Land of Boo, trying to find a place to live, causing all these hijinks, upsetting cloud people. It's just fantastic. I love the way they handled this little montage, and I think without it, the episode would greatly suffer. Great song. Good job. Good job, Adventure Time. Good job, creators of Adventure Time. Yeah, you did it. You made a good musical number that I'm a huge fan of. So yeah, that's about all I have to say there. Not too much else. I have undying praise for this montage. The rest of the episode, it's pretty good. Like, I can't complain, honestly. I'm saying but I don't have too many gripes. I don't have too many critiques. It's just nothing was so fantastically mind-blowing that I have to praise it. And Adventure Time has a lot of just solid, decent, entertaining episodes, but there's not too much else to say other than, like, yeah, I had fun and pointing out things I liked about it, or fun little quirky details, because Adventure Time has millions of those, and I can probably do that forever. But, yeah, that's about it. See you guys next time. Oh yeah, hug me.